As ambassador has mentioned, our panel was, together with the panel 18, the most part of this panel have been elaborated by the ambassador. In any case, I'd like to add something about this paradigm and different challenges. In my view, the process in which we are participating today and which will be much more intensified and will be faster, it's the process of globalization. It doesn't mean that this process of globalization was only for this last decades, but the new technologies in communication and telecommunication has helped this process of globalization, which will be, as I mentioned, much more important. And another element of this globalization, interdependency between countries, between people, between religions, and I believe that through this process of globalization and interdependency, we will have, in one way or another, a destruction of the myth of borders. These borders or these frontiers will be relatively destroyed through mixing of the population and also through the different mixing of religions, families, etc. But to understand better what will be the challenges of our century, we make a kind of competition of three main moves or shifts in our history. The first was agrarian revolution, the second industrial revolution, and the third one, which we are participating today, it's information revolution, which is developed in a parallel way with biological one. And in this panel, we have said that, or at least we hope that this information revolution and biological revolution be in parallel. They will produce new changes and through different shifts in our society. One of them will be a shift or a change in government. So this process will influence the governance, and the governance will be much more web governance or digital governance. And not only the control on this governance, particularly on the executive power, will be developed through different institutions, constitution and legal institutions, and traditional media, but this control will be also realized by social media. And we see also these elements today. The social media is becoming new audit of this governance. Other element in this process of development in politics will see a kind of shift of power from the central government to the local government on one side, and another shift from central government to supranational authorities, like, for example, the United Nations. And for that, well, it was discussed in this panel that we need reforms in our global institutions, particularly in the United Nations, reform in the United Nations could be amendment of the charter, because this charter was drafted 50 years ago, so it was not reflected what is happening in our politics and our society. And much more important, it's the reform in the Security Council, because as it was mentioned by the ambassador, well, this kind of Security Council with 5 permanent members, well, and using this veto power through these 5 members, well, it's a kind of hard power mechanism, and we think that this mechanism has to be in one way or another limited, so to increase the role of soft power in this Security Council. So it's another element there. but also what we think it's, and what we have discussed in this panel, it's how to reform the process for protection, not only of human rights, but the protection of environment. And still we have no charter to protect this environment, which is a duty to be realized in the level of United Nations. Regarding the different other challenges, well, it's not only the challenges making this comparison and competition with these 3 revolutions. It's not only the family, it's not only regarding the transportation, education, politics, but also it's in business. And some elements which have to be mentioned again regarding these challenges are how to increase the stability in social economic stability, political and institutional stability in our century, and particularly how to increase the security. And in this security, what we agree together there, it's to use the smart power mechanism, which is a combination of 2 mechanisms, of soft power mechanism and hard power mechanism. So in general, we have to use this soft power, but when it's necessary, it's absolutely necessary to use the hard power mechanism, like in the case of fighting the Islamic State. Well, we have to use this hard power mechanism, but we have mentioned during the panel that this kind of mechanism is creating problems to the simple people, not to the leaders, political leaders. So it's necessary to be used only when it's absolutely necessary. And what we need and what we have to use in a normal situation is soft power mechanism. Another thing that we have discussed was what are the challenges for economy and trade, of course. Well, I'll be this global economy and trade. What will have problems regarding the energy, because still we have to think about the energy of this century, 21st century, regarding the environment, regarding education. And education, on the education, the discussion was more focused, and of course was the contribution of the ambassador of UNESCO to strengthen this component, which will become quite important component for the 21st century. And another question was the healthcare. What will happen and how this healthcare will be organized in the 25th century. At the end, we have mentioned also the changes in society. Well, we have had some contradictions or different ideas on these changes in society and on individuals. Well, some have been focused on networking, and also that more communication will be between individuals and different groups. Another part was that, well, this development in soft power mechanism, particularly in technology, digital technologies, they can produce a selfish individual, and personally I don't believe on that, because this kind of networking and this combination through media, this content, which will be realized also technologically, will strengthen the individual, but will strengthen also our society. And in this kind of process, we'll have also, and it will be present, I believe, also during the 21st century, we'll have this binomial, 2 components which will be in a kind of competition, the national feelings and the more common feelings, for example, the level of European Union, the national feelings, I believe, will be rather reduced, and the European feelings will be increased when this process of strengthening this European Union will be stronger and stronger. So, of course, we didn't say some special words on the education and how will be the universities in the next decades, but we believe that this process will be well strengthened through these new technologies, and these new technologies will be a important part of education, but also will be an important part of the governance, of the governmental process. Thank you.